Here's one of the things that's missing in cryptocurrency today: lack of user adoption. This is something I think about a lot. There's a lot of technologies coming out, a lot of really cool blockchain ideas that are pushing the envelopes of things that we thought might or might not be possible, but we're still missing user adoption. In this video, in our series on innovative cryptocurrencies, we're going to look at a cryptocurrency that is doing that is driving user adoption. What does everybody like about it? Why are they moving towards it? And does it have a long-term future? We're going to tackle all of those questions and more coming right up. All right, so I'm really excited to talk about Pi. Now, Pi is not a brand new cryptocurrency. It's been out for a little while, a few months. I've seen some early reviews in the late Q4 of 2019, but there's a lot of updates and new things that have happened with Pi, and I wanted to cover it because it's getting a lot of user adoption and traction. Now, by the way, as we get started, would you do me a huge favor? Would you hit the subscribe button? I want to produce a lot more videos, and also smash that like button too if you like what you're seeing. Now, if we've never met before, my name is Wes Spencer. I'm a technologist, I'm a cybersecurity executive, and I'm currently running a startup worth millions of dollars. Okay, so the world of Pi, what is it all about? Well, one thing that they would describe themselves at is sort of a technology and a blockchain idea that wants to bring the power to the people. They're all about producing and maintaining a cryptocurrency that anybody can get involved in and get using right away within seconds. And they are right as rain about that. They've hit that to the T, and I'm going to show and explain how it works in just a minute. But first, let's dive in a bit more into Pi at a high level so we can kind of understand why this is an innovative cryptocurrency and where the market is going with it. So if you ask the Pi team, they'll tell you that their mission is building a cryptocurrency and a smart contracts platform that's secured and operated by everyday people like you and people like me, which I think is a really cool thing. And we're going to get into this at the end of the video, but they're all about also the future goal in mind, creating an entire marketplace that's funneled and fueled by Pi and what that could mean for the user base. So I am going to talk about 3 use cases at the end that could have a lot of potential, and we'll see if that's going to be the case. Now, if you've ever wondered in these videos where I get my ideas from and how I dive into a cryptocurrency to learn about it, I'm kind of like you. I'm starting at a blank page for most of them when I dive in. And so what I usually do is I go right to the white paper. If a cryptocurrency doesn't have a white paper, I'm probably not reading. Now, why is that? Well, the white paper gives us a lot of details and contextual background that we can really use to get some insightful knowledge about what it's all about. And Pi is no different. They have a white paper that's available, and so I opened that up and I took a look. Now, there's some interesting things in their white paper that, to be honest with you, throw a few red flags, and we'll talk about those things. One interesting example is they really dive into like blockchain technology at an introductory level at the very beginning, and then all through the white paper they proceed to really talk about what I think they would call a sister technology, blockchain technology called Stellar. And so I think that's interesting. I think you could kind of take that of one of two ways. One is, are they truly meeting the needs of their market? They're going after the common everyday person. Well, in that case, I think a white paper that starts at a high level for people that are just approaching and getting into Pi and really don't know anything about blockchain technology at all, starting there, I think that makes sense. It's just very atypical in a cryptocurrency or blockchain white paper to start at a real high introductory level of like what cryptocurrency and blockchain is all about, how it was created, what a distributed ledger solves. So I think it's interesting they start that way. The other outcome that I think you could take from that is just thinking about it from this perspective of, are they deflecting? Are they trying to hide something? Are they trying to like do what we call refer to authority to sort of give some additional credence? Those are some things that kind of threw the red flags off in my mind, and I'm going to pay attention to this throughout Pi and its entire journey as we go along. Now, I'll tell you this, one thing that Pi really understands well is the entire economy that surrounds cryptocurrency and blockchain as a whole. So see, I've been in this world since at least 2012 and have really been following and very involved. And I've seen a lot of what I would call seismic shifts that have happened in the industry. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So in the early days of mining Bitcoin, it could be done easily with, a CPU. And then it eventually changed into doing GPU-based mining to get ahead. And now, fast forward to today, what are we in? We're not in just the world of ASICs, and I'm not going to dive into what an ASIC is. Think of it maybe at a high level as just specialized hardware that's dedicated towards a particular algorithm, which happens to be, in this case, Bitcoin mining, right? And so we look at where we're at today, and the average user can't mine profitably. It's unfortunate. And personally, I don't think that was ever in Satoshi's mind when he was creating Bitcoin at its infancy. I think he always wanted the average person to get involved and to be able to mine Bitcoin. Today, you can't even join a pool and operate profitably. Not unless you have a whole lot of gear. In fact, most of the mining that's done today is huge ASIC farms run by organizations with immense amounts of capital and are eating up power requirements the size of Switzerland. Now, I will tell you, Pi gets it. Pi understands it. As they go into the white paper, they say, we have a problem today in that the average common person really can't get involved in cryptocurrency outside of just buying it. And that is a problem for those that want to get involved and have a purpose and a place rather than just being an investor that buys. So I commend Pi for that. I think they do have their finger on the pulse of one of the problems that we have today at a high level that is involved in cryptocurrency. And also, I want to be fair here. Pi is not the only cryptocurrency that's seen this as a problem and tried to tackle it. I mean, this is actually a really common, I would say this is one of the three most common problems that anybody that's been involved in cryptocurrency has seen as a challenge. So here's an example of another cryptocurrency that's got a way longer shelf life than Pi, but has seen the same problem and trying to solve it in their own way, and that's Litecoin, right? So Litecoin is a script-based miner that is ASIC resistant, and the reason they went with that algorithm was simply because they wanted to enable everyone to get back into the possibility and capability of mining. And there's a lot of other script-based cryptocurrencies that are out there that are doing similar things, and a lot of other blockchain approaches that aren't what we call proof of work. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. We've seen this before. It's not a novel concept. What is novel is the way that Pi is trying to solve that problem. And their approach to that problem is a consensus-based approach that's very similar to Stellar or Stellar Lumens if you've looked at the actual implementation of that cryptocurrency itself. And see, it's this idea of a consensus by a group or a majority and driving to a decision that doesn't require a consensus based on proof of work, where a whole bunch of people are crunching really complex math, resulting in lots and lots of compute resources like Bitcoin to rush to the first answer to say, I have proven the answer to solve this block and therefore I am mandating consensus. It doesn't work that way. It's rather a consensus by a vote or a consensus by peers. And that is a good approach. And the Pi people will tell you, the core team will tell you, they're not the first to come up with that. The majority of the white paper actually is them referring to Stellar itself as a way to pivot or pioneer that is a possibility. And while we are going to get into more details of how that consensus and voting system works, let's talk about Pi as a cryptocurrency itself. So here's another difference. Bitcoin has a limited supply. It's 21 million, and once that last Bitcoin has been mined, there will never ever be another Bitcoin ever produced ever again. Now, Pi has this idea of a limited amount, but their approach and their take is different. See, anytime someone joins into Pi, there's a pre-mined assignment that's particular and based for that user itself. So rather, again, than Bitcoin having 21 million and it's done, it's based upon some number that's been pre-mined that's specific and set aside for each user in the Pi system. So what we don't know is what that finite amount of predefined Pi per user is. See, the white paper doesn't say. I wish it did. And it's a frustration of mine. Maybe that number has already been decided and is just yet to be documented, or maybe the number is not known at all and will be determined at a later date. Who knows? Okay. So let's get back to the consensus thing, because this is where it all gets really interesting. If you've never followed Stellar before, I'll have a link in the description where you can see some videos on how Stellar works, because I'm going to go at a high level and sort of a quick level of how this consensus system works. But that video will explain a lot more if you're curious and really want to dive in more to see, is a consensus-based voting system, does it have a legitimacy here? And by the way, I think it does. But you can see the video if you want to watch more about what Stellar is doing. So keep in mind what the Pi team, the core team, does often is they continue to refer in the white paper back to how Stellar works, and they say, we're following that, we're following that, we're following that. Maybe we make a few tweaks and changes, but by and large, that's what they follow. Now again, you already heard me say the consensus is not based on solving some complex math like Bitcoin to solve a block. It's based on a voting system of peers. It's sort of like this trust system that's involved, and it requires a lot of messages going back and forth between all of the peers or nodes in the system to reach that consensus. Now, naturally, in order for that to work, there's got to be thousands and thousands of votes, and those votes have to take place really quickly. Well, guess what we have the advantage of today? Really fast internet and fast machines that can all facilitate that in an automated fashion. So it's not really a problem. Just like YouTube, I'm watching and billions of packets are coming in as I'm consuming my video content. The voting system is all automated as well throughout the protocol, throughout the actual Stellar protocol. So it does require lots and lots of voting to reach consensus among peers, but that does happen very simply because all of this is automated and we live in an age where, let's be honest, we have really fast internet. But the key to making it really happen is groups of trust. So when these votes are happening, it's sort of like this way of saying this one node might say, hey, I'm voting for something, and all my peers or all my people in my trust group are also voting for something. So here's a way you can kind of think about this. Let's say a decision needs to be made and something needs to be added into the blockchain itself for Pi or for Stellar, since we're kind of using both at the same time. It's almost, in my mind, it's like this. It's like taking a rock and throwing it into a pond. We know where that entry began, and eventually the shock waves of that are felt everywhere. It takes some time, but the ripples come through and everybody else sees what happened there and all agree, just like the ripples in the pond show where an initial impact happened and everything eventually responds to it. And by the way, that word ripple, I use that intentionally because two cryptocurrencies that use this same consensus voting approach are Neo and also Ripple. So in Ripple's case, I think they're pretty aptly named, don't you? Now you could be thinking, all right, Wes, so I'm hearing you, but how is Pi any different? It's so far, there's no distinction here between the way Neo and Ripple and Stellar and others work, right? Well, yeah, there are some differences, and I think now is a good time to kind of pivot into that. But I wanted to make sure you understood how that voting system works to gain consensus, at least at a high level, because that is tantamount to how Pi is going to be successful and if it'll be successful. If I had to give an example, and I had to start somewhere, of where Pi is by far and away number one in distinguishing themselves in this consensus-based approach, here is what I would say. I would say they have a rabid user base that is growing like crazy. Anytime you search a news article or a Reddit post for Pi and want to see more, you're going to get flooded with comments about, hey, join my Pi circle. Here's the code you can get to start. Just as an example of that, I was looking at a Stanford news article about the creators of Pi, and pretty much every single comment by the hundreds were inviting you to join their trust circle. He was inundated by it. So truly, I do think this is something they've done a good job at, either for better or for worse, but they've been good at it. And the marketing here is legit. So now we get to the things that I really don't like about Pi around the viral marketing and their approaches and what they're doing to drive adoption. The best way I can show all of this is just to dive into it in the app together. Let's just jump in. So I've already downloaded Pi. I've already got it up and running. I'm not going to show you those steps, but I'm going to show you everything else. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So when we open this, notice that I'm already earning some Pi. So now let's just dive into the app a little bit, and I want to show you some things that I think are pretty interesting about Pi, and you'll see more of what I mean. So first of all, they have this idea of roles, as you can see here. Now there are 4 roles that are active and involved inside of Pi. All 4 have the ability to earn Pi because they're performing something very important inside of the entire ecosystem. Now, I don't know if you're going to see what I see, but these 4 roles are really interesting, both in how they're marketed and also in terms of how they are described and what's important. So there's a pioneer, there's a contributor, there's an ambassador, and there's a node. So a pioneer is you earn Pi, you become a pioneer once you sign into the platform, and you earn Pi simply by proving that you're a human, simply by signing back in every single day in a 24-hour period. Now, the second is a contributor. So you can see here you mine at a higher rate by becoming a contributor. Well, how do you do that? You complete 3 earning sessions in a row. And that makes sense, right? They're sort of incenting you to become very active in the platform. And then you have an ambassador. You earn and become an ambassador by inviting more people into the Pi network. And then also you can run a node. Now, I'm not running a node in this video, but if anyone's curious and want to see what a Pi node does look like and how it works, I'll spin one up. Just let me know in the comments below. Say, hey, I want to see that. I want to see what it looks like, and I'd be happy to do that with you. Now, here's what I see out of this. This looks a lot like a multi-level marketing scheme. Am I alone on that? An MLM? I absolutely freaking hate MLMs, right? There's so many MLMs that are out there, like the whole Boss Babe thing, the whole like, hey, join and you're like Diamond, Ruby, Sapphire 3 preferred. And it's all this gimmick that's really built to get people involved and start shelling into a system just to get involved to make more money. And it's like, it is kind of like Jim in The Office when he's explaining to Michael that he got involved in a pyramid scheme. It's like, oh, no, it's not a pyramid scheme. It's just like everything else that's out there. But in truth, the only way a pyramid scheme makes any money is more people coming in under you. Now, I'm not saying that Pi is doing that. I'm just saying it feels like that a little bit when you look at these roles. And it just really kind of rankles me a little bit, to be quite honest. Okay, so you can see that I've earned some Pi. You can also see the members that have been invited in. Now, I've blacked out their names just to kind of keep it private, but these are 3 people that are on my team. The first one is the one who invited me in. And then 2 more are those that I have invited that have accepted my invite. So you make more Pi by inviting more people in. Now you see where the viral marketing comes from, don't you? I mean, clearly, the more people you invite, the more you earn. It's going to turn this into a feeding frenzy of everybody asking everybody to join. And that is kind of frustrating when you think about it. That's what's driving this economy, is everybody wants to get in, and the more people that become members on your earning team, and the more people that help you earn more Pi. You can also see here I can invite people and I can ping the inactive people. So, the people that are in my downline, so to speak, to use MLM terminology, I'm pinging you because you've not been active. I mean, this is going to become something that gets kind of frustrating, to be honest. The other thing I wanted to show you in the app is also this idea of a chat. So they've got this chat system that's here for the pioneers, and then also announcements. Now, the common folk like us can't produce into the announcements, but you can see the announcement that they've put in through here. So the chat system is something that we can all talk through and communicate. It's almost like a lightweight social media platform. And at the end of this video, when I get into the use cases that surround what Pi is all about, you're going to see that. You're going to see this has the makings of a powerful user-based social media platform that can be monetized, and Pi could be the driving economics behind the whole thing. And that's where some of the brilliance is. But I'm going to save that towards the end when we get into use cases, if you don't mind. One thing I did see as I was scrolling through the announcements, notice over here, they talk about the Happy Pi Day on March 14th when that occurred, and they're going to give away to one member, it looks like 3,141.59 Pi, you know where the number comes from, right? So from the core team. Now that's interesting. Where does that come from? And I do want to know this. Is that pre-mined? Nowhere in the white paper, nowhere in Pi at all do I get any sense of whether they pre-mined or it's just the core team has been involved and active for so much longer. But it does make you wonder, okay, how much Pi do the actual core team members have? See, this kind of gets to one thing I really hate with cryptocurrencies is pre-mining. Anytime I see a cryptocurrency that is known to have a pre-mine, I just shut it off altogether, because it's really anti and against what a cryptocurrency should be all about. If the owners that created the cryptocurrency are going to reap most of the rewards, guess what? What's in it for the rest of us? Fair thought, and something we should be thinking about. So I'm not saying that Pi is doing a pre-mine. I'm just saying the core team members certainly have a whole lot more than the rest of us, and definitely something you should be thinking about. All right, so I promised I'd talk a little bit more about use cases. The first one I've already mentioned is a social network. If you've already built the platform, the mechanics for a social network, the only thing you need to make it go from there is users, and then really good content and collaboration inside of it. Now that part, of course, has not been solved, but the first part has been solved in having lots and lots of users and the mechanics and shell and infrastructure to build up around this. So Pi does have visions, and they're very clear about that in the white paper, to commend them, that we want want this to become a social network that we can use, that we can monetize, that we can advertise and do a lot of things in. So we do see where Pi is going with this, and I love their forward-thinking vision, and I do think that's something that would be required to make Pi truly take off beyond sort of the cash grab that it is right now. Now, secondly, because the whole thing is some kind of marketplace, you have the ability through these security groups or these trust groups to build some kind of payment mechanism through Pi to allow users to have a marketplace to buy and sell goods and services. The white paper does talk a whole lot about those security groups becoming the trust circle or that platform that kind of drives this whole thing to work. I don't know about that yet. I mean, Gary, the guy that invited me in, hey, I love you, guy, but I'm telling you, I'm not sure my trust would go beyond just inviting into the app and using it there. But would I trust him for money movement just because he's in my circle and the people that he trusts? I mean, the white paper talks a lot about all of that. And the other simple pivot from all of this as well is just allowing for an advertisement network. So just like Facebook, YouTube, and everything else that's out there, Insta, all the rest have a really good advertising network because they have a large number of users. Pi could do the same thing as well. What happens if an individual user or a company that's using Pi wants to boost or promote or advertise and get their attention? They could certainly use their earned Pi to do so. Now, this is kind of similar to what the Brave browser is doing with BAT, or basic authentication token, and I love their concept, by the way, of sort of reversing and changing the way that advertising could be used. Instead of mining user data, rewarding users based upon assigning and giving them free BAT inside the Brave browser. And by the way, if you haven't checked Brave out, definitely dive in and take a look. I absolutely love what they're doing. And if anyone wants me to cover Brave and their approach to advertising and how BAT works, let me know. I'd be happy to make a video on that because that's truly an innovator, but just one that I haven't made a video on quite yet. So I want to be fair here, and I will say that Pi has done a lot of awesome things well. They're very smart people, they're forward thinking, and they built a really good network. I mean, evidenced by how many users are in the system and how it's growing like crazy, and the fact that I'm doing a video on this. And I like that, and I truly commend them for building such a great user-based network. And I like that, and I truly commend them for building user adoption first. See, most blockchain techs that I see come out try to solve a technical problem first and then try to get the user adoption later. But it seems like with Pi, they've flipped that and they've really started with user adoption, and then they'll build in the technical abilities later. And I think that's an interesting perspective and an interesting way to approach. I will tell you, having run multiple startups, my view on that is actually kind of similar. You focus on the value of your company first. That's what it's all about. And if you have a value that you're trying to solve for, then you can build the technical things to get those just hurdles along the way. So I do think Pi is tackling this in kind of a smart way that really is the antithesis to the way a lot of blockchain creators and innovators do think about it. So we'll see what comes out of this. Now, being fair-minded, I want to dive into the negatives, or at least the negatives that I see out of it. And I'm curious to know if you think these are negatives. Let me know your thoughts as well in the comments down below, because I really do want to read them. So first of all, it's closed source. I mean, that's a fact of the matter. There's no GitHub that I can find. There's no source code. Eventually, there are things that they promise that I saw in the white paper that will be open source, like the node, which I think the node has to be open source. Currently, I can find no evidence of that. But because it's closed source, you just have to approach this a little differently. I'm not saying closed source is bad. I'm just saying there's some trust details there that you've really got to think about if you're going to dive all in on something like Pi, because we don't really know what's happening in the background. Now, secondly, you heard me talk about this. The whole thing just feels like an MLM, and I hate MLMs. I can't tell you how much I loathe MLMs. So I don't like that perspective out of it. Do you think I got the point across? Do you think they know that I hate MLMs? I don't know. I hate MLMs. And I'm not done yet. A few more things. So they can refer in the white paper all they want to Stellar, sort of pointing to authority, because Stellar is doing some really cool things. That's awesome. But I really want to see more meat out of how Pi itself works. Much of the white paper is just in reference to the way Stellar does it, and we're going to do that too. Or the way Stellar does it, we are doing that too. Now, the other thing I don't like, if you noticed, at no point have I really talked about the core team members and where they came from. This is something that they talk about a lot. In fact, it's just in the default invite when you invite somebody in. So let me show you this. If I hit my members, and then I hit the invite button, and then I use other channels, because I just want to show you what the text looks like. Notice here, even in the invite itself, they talk about themselves developed by Stanford PhDs. Who cares? Look. To be honest here, I have hired and fired Stanford graduates and other Ivy Leagues. I'm not saying that they're not smart. I'm just saying in my mind that has no bearing. I really don't care where you come from. In fact, you can stay anonymous in most blockchain texts as far as I'm concerned. As long as I can see the math and the data and details behind it, I'm fine with that. So it just kind of bothers me that they want to refer to authority again. Hey, we're Stanford PhDs. I really don't care that you're a Stanford PhD. That means nothing to me, and it should have no bearing in Pi itself. And that's about all I can think of for the negatives at the moment. The only neutral that I would point out is on the governance side. So in the white paper, they do talk about how the governance is handled currently right now, and until Pi gets over 5 million members, it's going to stay centrally governed and managed by the core team. I'm okay with that. I understand why they're doing that. We'll see from the governance structure when Pi does grow over 5 million users, and I truly think it will. What happens at that point? Do they actually do the things they say they're going to do and distribute out from the governance and really kind of allow others in? I'm very curious to see and going to be watching to see if that's something they do or if they continue to own it. And if so, then that becomes a huge major red flag for us as well. But I truly don't think they'll do that. I don't think there's any risk of that just because they've been very public and open in the white paper itself on their governance structure and when they're going to make some of those changes. So what do I think about Pi? Pi is darn cool. Will I use Pi? I mean, I just showed you. I'm using it right now. I'm going to continue to use it. I do think it has a hope. I do think it has a future. I do think it has a purpose, and they are settling and solving some things. There are some major red flags, but let me be honest with you. I'm not afraid of red flags. When it comes to innovative technology, there ought to be red flags. If something is super, super safe, it's not innovative. The whole idea of being an innovator is taking risks and doing some things differently. So I'm totally cool with that. I don't mind those red flags as much because I truly think for technology to go somewhere and shoot to something new that we've never done before, the moonshot, so to speak, you've got to do it differently. You've got to approach something differently. You've got to take some risks. So some of the red flags that are here, okay, we'll see what happens. And if I don't like it, I'll back out. But for now, I think it's really cool, and I'm a pretty big fan of what Pi is doing, which is why I wanted to make a video on this. And by the way, if anyone does want to join into my security circle, I guess I'll just be like all the others that are out there, just constantly shilling. Go join. Mine is Pez Dispenser. I'll put it in the description down below. If you want to join into mine, be happy to have you in. In fact, it'll be fun tomorrow after I produce this video and put it on YouTube if others are going to add me into their security circle. I think that's pretty cool, right? So we'll see what happens out of all of that. I'm pretty interested to see, and by the way, that doesn't mean I trust you. Nor should you trust me, but I love what Pi is doing. I think it's really interesting stuff, and it's certainly something worth following. Give me your thoughts. I would love to know what you think. Would you leave a comment down below? Give me your thoughts. Give me your feedback. Are you using Pi? Do you think it has a purpose? What do you think about their future plans? Did any of the red flags I mentioned, are they red flags to you? Are they okay? Give me your thoughts. I love and welcome differing opinions. I think that's good for discourse. Give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear. The last thing I will say is if you like this video, will you mash the like button for me? Will you share it to others? And the last thing you could do for me is will you hit the subscribe button? That'll just make sure I continue to be able to produce some really good content and keep this going. Thank you so much.